Good evening. This is Decision 2017. Polls closed nationwide at 5 p.m. In a historic election, the first time a presidential election has had to be repeated and the first time under the new constitution that the opposition has boycotted. We're waiting on numbers from the IEBC, especially the number people will be looking at is that turnout figure. How many people actually came out to vote in this election? The opposition, NASA, has already been claiming that turnout was as low as 25–30%. Jubilee is disputing that. Who will be the winner in this election? A lot of people think they already know. President Kenyatta, considering that NASA told its supporters not to go out and vote. My name is Larry Mitowo. This is our continued coverage of this, the second time we're doing a presidential election. We've got people all around the country making sense of such a historic day. Let me introduce you right now. We've got NTV's Dennis Okari joining me from our NTV Kisumu studios, where there's been a lot of activity. And Dennis, you spent the whole day out in the field, police battling youth who had barricaded roads. There was no activity there yet. We'll come back to Dennis in a moment, but I also want to show you who else we have here with me. My colleague Victoria Rubadiri is joining us from NTV Eldoret. She's been watching the view from the Rift, really, what has happened there and what will happen next, especially when those results start to come in from Tarbo, from the different constituencies, Keses, and other parts of Uasin Gishu County. So we're going to be coming back to Vicky in a moment. Also joining me from Nakuru, the constituency tallying center, I believe in one of the constituencies, is my colleague Bridget Singana. She's again been out there for us watching the reactions and the voting process take place. She reported all throughout this day telling us that the turnout didn't look to be as major as we had seen compared to the 8th August poll. And also, NTV's Nimrod Tabu joining us from Mombasa tonight, where he has also been watching some activity there. We saw some protests. We saw youth try to break down a wall in one part of, I believe that was in Changamwe constituency. And Nimrod is joining me right now from what appears to be the constituency tallying center where you are, Nimrod. Where exactly is this and what's happening?
Kaluyu, Kapinga, 0. Kenyatta, Uhuru, 46. Waura, Michael, 0. Nyaga, Joseph, 0.
I think Nimrod did not hear me, but what then happened?
Thank you so much, Larry Mado. We are at Chuda Day Secondary School. This is the main tallying center for Mvita constituency. And as you can hear behind me, the returning officer in this particular tallying station is actually making an announcement about a polling station that has just reported the results here. President Uhuru Kenyatta in that particular polling station garnering about 41 votes. The rest of the presidential candidates, as we had, 0. Just an indication of how the voter turnout was here today in most of the polling stations. Recording a poor turnout of the voters who came here to vote for the presidential, fresh presidential election in many constituencies and many polling stations here in Mvita constituency. Right now, we're expecting more activity to take place here. Of course, many presiding officers from different polling stations are now reporting their results here and coming with their ballot boxes in various constituencies. We're expecting this activity to go on for the better part of this evening. I'm being told so far, out of 187 polling stations in Vita constituencies, in Vista constituency, I beg your pardon, only 150 so far have reported. And the average in all these polling stations, would you believe, has been a voter turnout of 15%. That is the average. And this is information that we're getting from the returning officer in this particular tallying center. So we're expecting the same to happen in Mombasa County. There are various different tallying centers reporting from different constituencies. And of course, we'll be able to let you know exactly what is going on. The Cabinet Secretary, Najib Balala, is obviously here. You, of course, among other leaders, were the lead campaigners for President Uhuru Kenyatta, the Jubilee flag bearer. And in a few minutes from now, we'll be talking to him just to get a feel of exactly what this day has been like, what's their take about this particular election, and whether indeed they're happy about the turnout and the results so far. Of course, President Uhuru Kenyatta leading in so many of the polling stations that we attended, most of the voters here having declined, especially the supporters of NASA, having declined to participate in this election as demanded by the presidential candidate Raila Odinga. The situation is quite peaceful here. A huge contingent of police officers And any minute from now, we're expecting to have an address with Mheshimiwa Najib Balala, just to get a feel of exactly what's going to happen. But we'll tell you more from Mvita constituency in the next couple of minutes, just as soon as we get more results from this particular area. But until now, we can report that 187 polling stations are in Mvita constituency. So far, they have received results from 150. And out of those 150, they've only gotten an average of 15%, which is a collection of the turnout, basically in the whole of Mvita constituency. But we don't know about many other constituencies that are here. Of course, Mombasa County is a county that has many polling stations. I believe maybe close to 900 polling stations. And many of them we haven't been to as tallying centers, but we were there earlier just to witness the voters going through and participating in their democratic right to vote. Back to you, Larry.
Road for us in Mvita tonight. When the Jubilee Chief Campaigner in the Coast Region, Najib Balala, begins to speak, we will come back to you. Right now, we're looking at this signal out of the Bomas of Kenya, the National Tallying Center, and the National Returning Officer for the presidential election, Wafula Chebukati, the IEB's chairman, is speaking. Let's tune in.
This is our further update. We're sorry about the delay. We were trying to get the statistics. We have 40,883 polling stations. Out of the 40,883 polling stations, 35,564 polling stations opened or sent an opening message, meaning voting took place, and this represents 87% of the total number of polling stations in the country. 5,319 polling stations did not send an opening message, meaning either there was no voting or voting may have taken place, but they don't have network for purpose of sending the message. 50 constituencies had all the polling stations opened at 100%. So far, we have received 27,124 from 34As. This is both at the back end and in the public portal, which means this is part of what forms 80% of the 35,564 polling stations which opened this morning. The estimated turnout, and this is an estimate, the actuals are being worked on. Estimated turnout as at 5 p.m. stood at 48%. That's turnout of the voters stood at 48% as at 5 p.m. Now, these 5,319 polling stations that did not open or are yet to send a message are spread across the country. So it's important to understand that, and I said earlier in our afternoon release that the counties which I mentioned, I said including, I did not specifically say those particular counties. I said including the counties which I stated in the afternoon. So thank you very much. That's our current update. We shall continue updating you at a time you shall be informed. Thank you. Yes? That's, I see a hand there.
Just a clarification, Chairman. You're saying that apart from Kisumu, Siaya, Homa Bay, and Migori counties, there are more that we'll have a repeat election on Saturday.
Yes.
Could you specify, you say 5,319 polling stations, yes, but where are the rest? Are you including Kibra constituency in Nairobi?
Let me say that the information is being worked on. We haven't got all the counties, all the polling stations. This information is still worked on, and we shall be giving you a further update. There are some which were challenged because of the weather. There are others which couldn't open because of security issues. And we want to give you a comprehensive list. It will be gazetted tomorrow for purposes of voting on Saturday. And that's why we want to get everything correct, and it shall be given to you.
Jina langu ni Mathias Momanyi kutoka KBC Radio Taifa. Labda ndugu Chebukati, ukiangalia kuna changamoto ambazo zimeibuka katika sehemu mbalimbali za nchi. Hii ikiwemo shughuli nzima ya kutimiza ile asilimia inayokusudiwa ya upigaji kura. Je, tukiangalia juzi wakituambia kwamba hii inaitwa quorum inaweza kuwa ni sababu ya kufanya maamuzi, na je, kama tunaweza kuangalia hii kwa misingi ya quorum katika upigaji kura, huu uchaguzi unaweza kusema kwamba ni mkamilifu?
Swali yako unauliza kama uchaguzi ni ukamilifu. Tunaendelea na kufanya ile mahesabu. Kuna watu wanahusika, kuna maobservers huko nje, na sisi sote tutakuja hapa tuseme kama uchaguzi ni kamilifu ama si kamilifu wakati tutakuwa na hesabu zote.
Okay, my name is Erin Mwangi from KUTV. My first question, please specify 48% turnout is how many voters. And my second question is that you're saying that in Kiambu, in Siaya, Homa Bay, and Migori, they'll be voting on Saturday. And did the commission consider that on Saturday we'll be having the Seventh-day Adventists going to church? Did you consider that it might interfere with them coming out to vote?
Thank you for your question. Let me say that we are working within the law. We are working within the constitutional framework. Election results must be announced within 7 days from today. And sacrifices must be given. And so the commission considered all factors before arriving at the day of Saturday. And it's not just Nyanza, as I said. We have other areas in the country where polling did not take place, and all those areas will be given an opportunity to exercise their rights on Saturday, those who want to vote. Those who don't want to vote will not be forced to vote. It's a constitutional right. And so the date of Saturday, or the day of Saturday, was taken after deliberation in the commission, taking into consideration the fact that time is a constitutional dispensation, and we must follow the framework in the Constitution. Thank you very much. I'll take one last question.
Two more questions. My name is Winnie Kamau, and I just wanted to confirm if you have put measures into place for the Saturday election, just in case the same cycle of revolt happens again. Are we still going to have, are you going to push it again for if something happens again, like what happened today?
Chairman, there's a question you didn't answer on what 48% represents. And then secondly, you have received 80% of the Form 34As. When do you think you can be in a position to receive the physical forms and for you to declare the results from those polling stations that participated?
About the 48%, we said is an estimate from the figures which we have. The actual figure per county, per constituency, in terms of turnout is being worked on, and that information will be shared with you in due course. You talked about, what was it? What happens? Preparation? What happens if something goes wrong on Saturday? Preparations go wrong? Now, the law is very clear. If you look at Section 55B of the Elections Act, it says that where there's natural factors preventing voting, or if in case like what we experienced today, issues that breach peace, the Commission is under duty to give the voters a chance to exercise their rights. That duty is mandated in the law, and that's what we are doing. And now, if in case Saturday we have similar issues, then the Commission will have to make a decision on the way forward, but we cannot keep on extending that right to vote after Saturday. We shall have to make a decision on what will be done. Thank you very much.
Chairman, there's a question you haven't answered.
Which one?
You have received 80% of the Form 34As, that is the scanned images.
Yes.
When do you think you'll receive the physical forms, and how soon can you declare the results from those polling stations that you participated?
I think the physical forms, commissioners, yeah, the physical forms have to be taken to the returning officers by the presiding officers, and it's the returning officers who will bring them to this tallying center. So we expect that from tomorrow onwards, the returning officers will come here and bring us the forms. Thank you.
Some breaking news out of the IEBC right now. 47%, that is the estimated turnout in this fresh presidential election. As at 5 p.m. today, we expect that the final result that being worked on right now, he said, in due course we will know. He did not want to commit on when the final result will be announced. He says they've received 80% of the Form 34As transmitted electronically, but the physical forms have to be there before he can announce the result. He said in the coming days, hopefully tomorrow, he'll have a better sense of what's happening right now. And he also said that nearly 87%, actually 87% of the polling stations in the country opened or transmitted an opening signal. So that, he says, means that 87% of polling stations opened today. And Edmund Nyabola is at one of them, I believe. This is in Makueni County. Edmund, good evening. What's happening?
Makueni County. In fact, we are at Makueni Boys High School, which is the constituency tallying center for Makueni constituency. 225 polling stations within this constituency. And right now, as you can see behind me, tallying is going on at the constituency tallying center. And just slightly over 30 polling stations have been verified here. The results taken in from the presiding officers, and the ballot boxes collected, and the results as well displayed on the Excel sheet that you see behind me there. Generally, a very low turnout of voters here today. In fact, as low as 0 voter turnout in some of the polling stations like Siatu Primary School and Kathiathini Primary School as well. No voters turned up to exercise their democratic right of course, casting the ballot at the end of the day, because the presiding officers there say they opened the polling stations at 6 a.m. as required by law, but none of the voters appeared to cast their ballot. In some cases, there were voter turnouts in polling stations within the Wote town, which is basically the headquarters of Makueni County. And on average, we are seeing a trend of between 50 to 20 voters per polling stations from the ones that we've had from this exercise that is going on behind us here. And we spoke to some of them. We'll be hearing from them later on, the ones who voted, the ones who did not vote, and the reasons why they did so. But right now, more than slightly over 30 polling stations already tallied here at the constituency tallying center. Slightly more than 190 still to go, because there are 225 polling stations within this constituency. But in general, very low voter turnout in Makueni County. It's raining here very heavily, so we believe that might have affected some of the presiding officers coming here to bring in the voting materials, the ballot boxes, and of course their returns as well because of the rain. But they're still coming in numbers, and when they come here, the exercise is to verify and then display the results here, Larry.
Right, many thanks, Edmund Nyabola in Makueni Boys, that's Makueni County. He is one of the people that we've got around the country covering this fresh presidential election for us. And I've got now NTV's Andrew Ochieng, who has done a lot of running around really in Siaya and Busia counties, encountered tear gas and barricaded roads and just no small amount of drama. Andrew, this evening you're at Constituency Tallying Center. Where exactly is this?
Thank you, Larry. This is the Agricultural Training Institute in Busia Town. This is the tallying center for Matayos constituency, a constituency of about 56,000 registered voters and about 117 polling stations. The tallying exercise just going on right behind me, as you can see, with, if I could say, about 20 polling stations having brought in the results. So there is still a long way to go. There are still so many presiding officers and deputy presiding officers right behind us there, and even stretching outside, just waiting to bring in their material here for the final verification exercise. But from what we've noticed is the low turnout of voters. Just the returning officer for the county constituency here, just reading a few minutes ago, in a polling station of about 300 people, there was only one person who turned out to vote. And it's been the same scenario we've seen in many places of a very low turnout, despite the fact that in this place, at least the polling stations open, there was material available for people to vote. Remember, in Siaya County, voting did not take place at all because the material in many constituency tallying centers was not transported to the polling stations. Another thing that has been happening here in Busia town has been the running battles between protesters and police officers. There have been a heavy security presence here in Busia town of police officers just trying to clear the roads which have been barricaded by the protesters, who are, of course, being if you could say, a NASA stronghold, where there are so many supporters of the NASA presidential candidate who have been trying all their best to ensure that they do not vote, and they ensure that the voting does not take place in areas where they want the voting not to take place. Of course, there have been others also just extorting money and just having a ball on the roads. The police have been trying to get them out of the roads. Even right now, there were still gunshots and shots of tear gas canisters being lobbed in the air just to disperse the crowds. Earlier on, we were made to understand that in this particular constituency, there were 2 polling stations which were attacked, and some voting material was taken or stolen, whichever word you might want to use, some Kim's kits in Butula constituency. We are yet to understand how the investigation on that is going on. But that basically has been the report here from Busia County. Voting indeed did take place, but however the turnout was low. But there have been running battles between protesters and police in the streets of Busia town, and the police just trying to keep the situation calm here. Larry?
Roching in Matayos constituency, Busia County. I want to take you to the other part of the country. This is actually that's Bridget Ngana over there, who's just having a chat with Samdo, our cameraman. So I'm just going to skip over Bridget for a moment and take you to Eldoret instead. This is NTV Eldoret, and my colleague Victoria Rubediri is joining me now. I'm sorry I caught you by surprise. I didn't mean to. We just had a major confirmation from the IEBC chairman, Vicky, about the 47% estimated turnout. You were talking about this earlier with Trevor Mbija, and that seems to be less than half of people turned out to vote around the country. Was that the view from the Rift?
Just about, Larry. I can't say that that was entirely the picture that we saw. Certainly considerably lower than what we saw on August 8th, but the numbers much higher than what was in other areas such as the Nyanza area, Mombasa, for instance. But right here in the county of Uasin Gishu, as I was telling you, Larry, voting began early in the morning with no reports of disruptions. But even then, the numbers were not as impressive, as I was telling you earlier, in comparison to August. Take a look. Right on time, polling stations in Uasin Gishu County opened at 6 a.m. as IEBC personnel readied themselves for voters coming to exercise their civic duty.
Sikuwa na haraka kwa sababu najua kwamba tumekuja kuchagua rais na sisi tuko na furaha kuchagua Uhuru Kenyatta. Yenye tunaomba tu ni kwamba tuwe na amani.
Tumeraukia kuja kuchagua kiongozi ambaye tunampenda na ndiye ametuweka shughuli ya leo.
But unlike the August 8th general election a few months ago, the turnout was visibly less, with voters streaming into various polling stations.
Kwa majina naitwa Nasambu Wangila Julia, Mimi nimekuja hapa karibu 30 minutes na ninashukuru Mwenyezi Mungu ni kwa sababu watu wametana hapo vizuri, nimeona watu ni wengi na ninashukuru Mwenyezi Mungu na ninataka watu wapige kura, tukimaliza turudi nyumbani tuendelee kuoji katika runinga.
By midday, things changed, however, as more residents would make their way into the polling stations spread across the 6 constituencies of Uasin Gishu County. Age or ailment was certainly not going to be a hindrance for some.
Na wenye hawajatokezea na wahakikisha kabisa mimi ni mgonjwa kansa na naambia wenye hawajakuja kupiga kura tafadhali wajitokeze tupige kura.
Persons of interest in this county also took to the ballot box in their home constituencies, among them Deputy President William Ruto.
Sijatazamia kupiga kura vile nimetazamia kupiga kura hii ya leo, kwa sababu ya changamoto nyingi tulizopata hapo njiani tukingojea kupiga kura hii, njama na mambo mengine mengi ambayo yaliwekwa kama vizuizi ya Wakenya kujiamulia tena.
Operations by IEBC would slow down considerably this afternoon, and by 4 p.m. voting had come to an end in most polling stations.
Sasa ninaona hapa tunafanya vizuri, lakini kitu ya kwanza tunashukuru Mungu kwa sababu ya kutufikisha siku hii ya leo. Ni siku ambayo tulikuwa tumeingoja sana. Na sasa tunaona mambo inaendelea vizuri.
The county of Uasin Gishu is home to over 400,000 registered voters and 800 polling stations. And as the voting exercise kicked off in various parts of the country, NASA supporters right here in Uasin Gishu County heeded the call of their party leader by boycotting the exercise. Well, most of them went about their duties as usual, with some staying in their houses within Kisumu Ndogo in Eldoret. Gabriel Kudaka visited those areas and brings you the details.
At Warren High School in Eldoret, one of the polling stations within Uasin Gishu County, residents here exercising their democratic right. But at Juakali region in Eldoret town, NASA supporters went about their business.
Watu wengine wamepiga kura na wengine ni haki yao kutopiga kura. Na wote tunafanya kazi pamoja, vile mnatuona hapa, kuna Wakikuyu, kuna Waluya, kabila zote tuko hapa.
Mkubwa yetu alisema kwamba tukae kwa nyumba. Tulionelea kukaa kwa nyumba ni kufanya kazi ya bure, ili tukuje hapa tupate riziki kidogo kidogo.
In Uasin Gishu County, most supporters of NASA did not participate in this exercise. However, they maintained peace as some went about their business. In Kisumu Ndogo region within Langas Estate, most NASA supporters stayed away from the exercise. However, those who wanted to vote were not stopped.
Leo hii sijaenda kuvote na ni sababu ni kwamba ile matakwa ambayo tulitaka IEBC tufanyie haijafanya.
Kwa kura tumepiga mzuri sana. Hapa kuna amani, hakuna shida yoyote.
Some politicians moved around various polling stations, mobilizing voters.
Those areas which has low turnout definitely is not because they don't like the president or because they don't like the system. But it's apathy. It's apathy. They are tired of elections. They are tired of campaigns.
Gabriel Kudaka, NTV, Uasin Gishu County.
And tension is high in Soliat Ward in Soin Sigowet constituency at the border of the Kericho and Kisumu counties between members of the Kipsigis and Luo communities over the right to vote. A group of youth blocked voters from accessing the polling station and forced the IEBC officials to vacate the polling center. They attacked and injured 4 people who had already cast their votes, maintaining that they went against the wishes of the opposition leader Raila Odinga. Kevin Mutai reports from Kericho.
There was tension in Kapchebwai village in Kericho County after a group of youth barricaded roads heading to Bokwa polling station. They accosted and injured 4 people by beating them up, with some sustaining injuries after they were hit with stones. According to IEBC officials, the polling center had to be temporarily closed until police arrived and dispersed the rowdy youth.
Kidogo mimi naona jamaa amefamiliwa, ndio nikakimbia kuenda kumuokoa. Nikakutana na mawe nikikimbia. So si kuona mtu mwenye amenipiga na mawe, but wale ambao walikuwa wamefukuza huyu jamaa na mwajua.
The PO organized for them to get enough security,
When the security arrived at around 10 a.m., they were able to now relocate back to their polling station.
So in Sigawit, Member of Parliament Kipsangaret Koros was forced to visit the area to calm down the youth who were planning to retaliate.
Everyone has a right to vote. If they did not vote, they would have stayed away from the polling center because their colleges and laws wanted to vote.
People should vote peacefully and wait for the results tomorrow. And the people spreading social media that there are problems in Kericho County should stop.
Although the polling centers opened at 6 a.m. in some areas within Kericho County, the turnout was low compared to the previous election. But those who voted said the repeat presidential poll was to confirm their leader of choice.
Mtu mwenye anaona hawezi akajihusisha, ni vizuri yeye asijihusishe na kura, lakini asiseme ya kwamba kuwe na furugu katika nchi ya Kenya.
Election officials are very helpful in terms of identification of voters, and I think the reason why the process is going very fast is because it's only one ballot paper.
Some leaders criticized calls by the opposition to boycott the exercise, maintaining that NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga is inciting Kenyans along tribal lines. They claimed that even if the opposition fails to recognize Kenyatta's presidency, he is still a legitimate leader chosen by Kenyans.
Blackmail should not be entertained at all. I mean, enough is enough. We need to move the country. I mean, if you see the economy, it's really doing badly. We need to salvage the country for the sake of our children.
It was our hope that what he was fighting for all those years was for a better country and not selfish personal gain. But now it is becoming evident that what he was looking for all along was a chance to be at the heart of power and not that he believed in any ideals.
In Bomet County, some polling stations experienced system malfunctions but were repaired on time for residents to vote. Governor Joyce Laboso, who voted in Manaret, said that security was beefed up in the region and that no case of violence was reported.
It may appear like there are not many people around, but that is because it is only one vote that is being cast, so many people came fasting in the morning, cast their vote and left.
It's an election that residents here in Kericho have been waiting for, with some of them criticizing calls by the opposition to boycott the exercise, maintaining that Kenyans deserve a chance to exercise their democratic right by choosing the leaders of their choice. Kevin Mutai, NTV, in Kericho County.
And polls across Kajiado County closed at 5 p.m. this evening after a slow day of voting. Voters from across the county streamed to polling stations from as early as 6 a.m. Leila Mohammed brings us the highlights of the day.
The much anticipated and equally revered day of voting, October 26th, has come to an end here in Kajiado County, with voters coming in quite slowly, not as compared to August the 8th. We witnessed pretty early in the morning in Ongatarongai, where voters woke up pretty early, and we were able to speak to them, some saying they had gotten to their polling stations as early as 2 a.m. just to ensure that they cast that all-important vote. Na mama, ulifika hapa saa ngapi?
Saa 11:30.
Kulikuwa na watu wengi ulipofika?
Sio wengi sana.
Considering the fact that it is only the presidency that is under contention as at now, we were able also to go to Kajiado West constituency, where the lines were equally long pretty early in the morning, and residents there having turned out in their numbers just to make sure that they cast that all-important vote.
As you can see, the place is peaceful, and I'm hoping that by the end of the day there will be no chaos. I would urge those who are voting to cast their vote and go home. I'm heading home after having cast my vote. Those who will abstain from the voting process to stay at home and maintain the peace.
There was nothing much in terms of security issues. We were able to speak to some of the officials from the IEBC, and they told us that everything had begun quite well, quite early. By 6 a.m. Polling stations had opened across this county, 034. But here in Kajiado Central constituency, where it is the Member of Parliament here, who is an ODM Member of Parliament, things are not as busy as was expected. This is one of the polling stations, Al Huda Primary School in Kajiado Town, Kajiado Central constituency, where as at 3 p.m. nothing much is going on. Maybe this is because of the boycott that the NASA coalition had called, or people had already voted early morning.
Unajua kweli sehemu hii kuna kiangazi. Madugu zetu wengi wamehama na ng'ombe. Kwa hivyo hiyo haiwezi kuwa ni sababu ya baba eti walisema wasipiga kura, hiyo si sababu.
We've seen places like Kitengela in Kajiado East constituency where even the presiding officer is telling us that not so much had happened in terms of the numbers of people that they have seen coming into the polling stations early this morning. This was not something that was being experienced on August the 8th. So as polling comes to an end and counting begins, we shall be here in Kajiado County to bring you the latest in terms of the results as they trickle in.
And Marsabit is among the counties where voter turnout in the repeat presidential election was affected by the bad weather seen in the form of heavy rainfall that is being experienced across the county. Election materials in some parts of the county, such as Ileret, were received past 3 in the afternoon. NTV's Safi Godana Mamo with the update from Marsabit.
This is Complex Polling Center in Sako constituency in the county number 10, of course, Marsabit County. And as much as the polling stations were opened very early in the morning at 6, majority of the voters were not able to turn up that early to cast their votes due to the bad weather as a result of the rainfall that is being experienced in Marsabit County. And according to IEBC officials, that might have somehow contributed to the low voter turnout as compared to the August 8th general election.
And this is partly because people do not see persons of interest in maybe the positions in this election.
Kura ya marudio huwa idadi ya watu ambao wanarudia kupiga kura wanapungua. Hiyo ni kawaida na watu wamehama malishoni na mifugo, lakini tumefanya kampeni ya kutosha na nafikiri hata wakipungua sio sana.
In some parts of the county, especially North Horr sub-county, election materials had to be lifted. For example, Ileret ward received its ballot boxes at around 3:30 p.m. as Turbi ward in the same sub-county of North Horr received its ballot boxes and other election materials at around 12:30 p.m.
Gari mguu ilitoka ikapata shida ya diff. Tuliweza kuitisha reinforcement, alafu kuna gari ikatufikia.
Tunapiga kura kama kawaida. Juzi tulipiga kwa Mheshimiwa Uhuru na leo tutapiga zaidi.
For now, we are just waiting for the votes to be tallied in various tallying centers in the 4 sub-counties of Marsabit.
And that's the latest from Uasin Gishu County and various other counties. Bridget Ngana standing by in Nakuru to give us an update on what the voting exercise was like there. Bridget.
A very good evening to you, Victoria, from Eldoret. And here in Nakuru County, we are at the Nakuru West Central Tallying Center in this constituency. And this is where all the votes that were cast in this constituency are going to be collated and tallied. And as of now, we got in here from about 7 p.m. in the morning, rather p.m. in the evening. And what we noticed actually is from the 3 tallying stations that were already which results had already been coming in here. The returning officer had mentioned that by that time, by the 2 hours ago, Uhuru Kenyatta was leading with about 400 votes, with Raila following him with less than 20 votes. That was as of that time. I know the numbers have changed because we've seen many returning officers or polling clerks bringing in the ballots from the various polling stations in this constituency. But to give you a brief overview of how the day was in Nakuru County, people woke up, people came in, and the voting process was rather brief and short. In the various live coverages that we have provided in the course of this day is that people were saying the voting process was so fast, and it was because they were only casting one ballot, which was the presidential ballot, and that made it easier for people in the various polling stations present. Nakuru has more than 1,800 polling stations, and these results are going to be transmitted in the 11 constituencies in this county. And so we're not going to have a central tallying center, but we're going to be moving from various polling stations to just get a feel of what is happening. But so far here in Nakuru West, at the main tallying center, the process is going on smoothly. We have people bringing in the results, and they're being collated and tabulated in that board on the wall, in the projector on the wall. What is significant is that the governor of Nakuru County was also among those people who came out to cast their ballots, and he said that Nakuru County, or the county government, was also going to contribute to the reduction of fares for people who were having difficulties to come and vote in Nakuru County. So they were trying to mobilize the registered voters to come through to this county and also cast their ballot. Also of significance is the retired president, Daniel Arap Moi, was also among the people who participated in this exercise today. And in the 7 o'clock story that I had submitted, he was driven to the polling station at Moi Kabarak Primary School, and he cast his ballot at that time. And so far in Nakuru County, it has been peaceful, it has been calm, and apart from the significant figure that the retired President Moi also coming out to cast his ballot, the governor has been categorical that it is a safe county. People have been able to cast their ballots in a peaceful manner, and right now we are going to be in the various polling stations to give you the updates or the progress so far. But as I had mentioned at the beginning, here in Nakuru West, President Uhuru Kenyatta had already opened an early lead with more than 400 votes, and Raila Odinga following with about less than 20 votes. But we know those figures have changed because the polling or the tallying of votes is still continuing. Back to you, Larry, in Nairobi.
Right, many thanks, Bridget, in Nakuru, for us this evening. Everybody on our team has been working really hard, and they've been up since 5 a.m., for some of them 4 a.m. to get to the places where they are. And we're glad to have Enoch Sikolia back up, because we know Migori has had such a difficult day for you, Enoch. You had car trouble, you dealt with barricades, you dealt with tear gas, and he's having trouble hearing me. And I appreciate that, because Enoch Sikolia has had a really long day, and we appreciate that he's up tonight for us from Migori. Enoch, if you can hear me, what is the latest?
Thank you so very much, Larry Mado. Indeed, it has been an eventful day here in Migori County, not because that people voted here, but because there were a lot of battles between the police and protesters here, most of whom are supporters of the NASA coalition, having vowed to ensure that no election will be conducted here in Migori County. And as we speak right now is that the election was not conducted here. And let's just see how the day was from the package that we prepared earlier. The battle between the police officers and demonstrators began as early as 6 a.m. The protesters had barricaded the Migori, Isebania, and Migori Kisii roads. They burnt tires and heaped stones in strategic places to stop any movement. They had vowed to ensure no one is allowed to vote in Migori County, especially the 6 constituencies loyal to NASA leader Raila Odinga.
Kama mwenyekiti Chebukati mwenyewe alisema kwamba haina usawa. Sasa sisi kama wananchi tutaaminije? Ndio maana sasa tumekataa, tuwezi piga kura. Ndio na tupigi.
We want to tell Ruto, don't abuse Raila. Because one day, one time, we'll come to ask our vote, and we will not give you, whether you like or not.
And soon a clash ensued as the men in uniform engaged the protesters head-on, hurling tear gas canisters and shooting in the air to disperse the charged crowd. NASA supporters in Migori County were not giving up in their quest, engaging in running battles that lasted virtually the entire day. Elections, though, were conducted in 2 constituencies of Migori County, Kuria East and Kuria West. At St. Kizito Primary School polling center, a low turnout was witnessed as IEBC officials here placed the figure 31% of the registered voters.
Tunataka tupige kura, na tukipiga hii kura hatutaki tena machafuko hapa nchini Kenya. Sisi tumekaa tukisubiri hii kura kwa hamu sana, tukisema kwamba lazima tupige kura, na tukipiga kura tukipitisha rais, basi sisi tunasubiri IBC tangaze rais, vijana turudi kazini na tuweze kufanya kazi kwa udi na ufumba ili tupate kipato chetu.
And that is how the day was here in Migori County, and IBC has already announced that the repeat presidential polls will be conducted here on Saturday. But the youth, especially here, have maintained that they will see it out that no voting will take place even on Saturday, and they've vowed to continue with the demonstrations tomorrow. So we'll keep you updated on the happenings from Migori County. Back to you, Larry Mado, at the Nation Center.
All right, many thanks, Colin and our team. Excellent work out in Migori today. We appreciate all of the work that you do. I want to take you back right now, though, to Mombasa County, because I'm going to come back to Nimrod in a moment. Before that, I want to bring this to your attention. At least 6 people shot in Nairobi County as police engaged protesters, majorly in Kibra, Mathare, Ruaraka, Kawangware, and Embakasi East constituencies. The violent confrontations forced IEBC officials to either relocate or abandon a number of polling stations in the affected areas. NTV Seth Olale traversed the capital.
Olympic Primary School, which was among the IBC polling stations in Kibra constituency, was a no-go zone right from dawn to the time police officers arrived to disperse protesting youth. Sounds of gunshots and tear gas almost becoming commonplace as the youth tried to paralyze the voting process in Kibra constituency. The volatile scenario in Kibra forced IBC officials to merge 4 polling stations into one, centered at the Olympic Primary School. By late evening, there was only 1 vote that had been cast out of the 25,000 registered voters in the combined 4 polling stations that included KAG, PAG, Olympic Secondary School, and Olympic Primary School. Residents also claimed that 3 people were shot, 2 of them fatally. Similar scenes were witnessed in Mathare North and Area 1, where 1 person was reportedly shot. Security agencies there also engaged protesting youth who barricaded roads and prevented IBC officials from conducting elections. A church which doubled up as a polling station was reportedly torched by the protesters. IBC officials in Babadogo, Ruaraka constituency, were forced to relocate the Akref polling center in Kariadudu to Chandara primary schools as protesting youth barricaded the roads and engaged police in running battles. The security agencies were also forced to use tear gas to disperse protesting youth in neighboring Lakisama Estate. 1 person is also reportedly shot in Embakasi East constituency following violent confrontations between protesting youth and the police. In Kawangware, some areas were no-go zones as residents barricaded roads, lit tires and engaged police in running battles. A temporary residential structure was set ablaze, with Gatina area particularly affected and clashes running on into the evening. Seth Olale, NTV.
So a quick mea culpa. I said that the turnout estimated to be 47%. That's incorrect. Gunjiro Mbugu, the Nyeri Town MP, correcting me. He said 48%. I'm sorry, I heard incorrectly. That was my mistake. The turnout as at 5 p.m. today was estimated at 48%. They said they're working the exact figures, and we will know when they have worked that out. Let me take you right now, though, to Kisumu County, and NTV's Dennis Okari on a very clear street out there. Dennis, what is happening? What is the latest from Kisumu?
Well, Thank you, Larry. Kisumu has basically been a ghost town the entire day today and even now into the night. Most shops have closed for the better part of the day. There's no activity going on in this city, unlike most other days when there's a lot of activity, businesses opening up, a lot of vehicles cutting across the streets here. But today the roads were barricaded, they were blocked by protesters, and basically this was a clear indication and a show of defiance, and many boycotted today's election. There were slogans and chants all over the county of no election, no election, no election. So in the morning we saw a clash between protesters and the police, and we experienced a lot cutting through the streets, where at some point we were forced to pay up some money for the barricades to be removed by the protesters. So it's been a cat and mouse chase between the protesters and the police going into the night. And at the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Hospital, it was very, very busy as the doctors were receiving many people who were injured, many of them from gunshot wounds. At least 17 we know so far have been hospitalized there, 7 of them with gunshot wounds. 3 people so far this evening, that's the latest, have been confirmed dead by gunshot wounds. So that's the sort of thing that you have seen here in Kisumu County today. The governor saying that he actually announced a 7-day mourning, and also indicating that on Saturday there won't be any election. Still a show of defiance. But just to point out a couple of things that went on today is that at least the 3 people, like I mentioned earlier, were reported lost their lives in the election-related violence here in Kisumu. Authorities at the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga and Teaching and Referral Hospital confirmed that 1 person died as a result of gunshot wounds, while the second man was killed by a mob. Oktoba reports, because he was following up that incident from Kisumu town where the violent protests escalated in today's election and preventing them from taking place.
19-year-old George Odhiambo was shot on the thigh in Mamboleo Estate and was pronounced dead on arrival at the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hospital. It could not be immediately established whether George was involved in today's protests, which saw at least 17 people injured, 7 of them nursing gunshot wounds. Medics at the hospital had a hectic time attending to victims who thronged the casualty department. Both Kisumu County and the Red Cross ambulances crisscrossed the town to pick up the injured. Angry youths barricaded most roads in the town, making it difficult for IEBC officials to distribute the ballot materials.
They don't want the election because it's evidenced by the threats they are giving to officials.
By late this afternoon, ballot materials meant for the 196 polling stations within Kisumu Central constituency had not left the tallying center.
No, the POs have not. They are fearing to go.
Efforts by a contingent of General Service Unit personnel to clear the roads proved futile as the protesters regrouped and blocked them again.
Today is not a polling station. Today is a police station. Are you getting me? Yeah. Today is a police station. Today is a police station. So, even if you go to Alon High School there, you only find police with a uniform plus bullets. So let the entire government be through bullet but not ballot box.
Sisi tunafuata mambo ya baba. Baba akisema tunaenda left, sisi wote left. Na akisema right, sisi wote ni right. Kwa hivyo hakuna mahali penye imepigwa kura Kisumu. Na hatutapiga kura.
The running battles raged on for hours. Some of the areas worst hit by the violence included Kondele, Kawosh, Nyalenda, Kachok, Mamboleo, Kibos, Obunga, and Manyata. Most of the residents, however, kept indoors as gunshots rent the air till late this evening. Okukusa, NTV, Kisumu.
Well, those were the scenes today here in Kisumu County, and many of the victims that we spoke to claimed that they were dragged out of their houses and clobbered by anti-riot police, and that is something that the police have been doing the rest of the day. Some of of the events that we actually witnessed today, moving in to the homes. Kondele was a no-go zone today because there was so much that was going on. The protesters were clashing with the police. From the IEBC point, the returning officer had a hard time getting presiding officers moving voting materials to the different polling stations. Remember, Kisumu County has over 1,000 polling stations, but none of them received any voting materials, so it made it difficult, plus the transport logistical issues. So on Saturday, it will be interesting to see how the police and the security agencies will maneuver moving these voting materials from the main tallying center to the different polling stations here in Kisumu County. And I'll hand you over to Nimrod Tabu, who is in Mombasa. Nimrod.
Dennis Okari, unlike Kisumu and many parts in Nyanza province, Mombasa remained largely peaceful. Many places we visited, people were able to vote, albeit we had so many few voters turning up as early as 6 a.m. in the morning to cast their ballot. And until 2 o'clock, most of these polling stations had received very few voters who came in to vote. The only area that we can say had a few skirmishes and destruction was Bangladesh, where we understand that voters there or people who reside in that area, majority of them the supporters of the National Super Alliance, stopped IBC officials together with police officers from taking ballot papers and ballot material to various polling stations. But we understand now that the exact place where there was an incident, destruction and, stopping voters to vote, eventually IBC officials were able to make way into a different school where people were allowed to vote, and I'm told about 30 people were able to vote. But generally, everything was smooth. I'm now in Chuda Day Secondary School. This is a tallying center from Vita constituency. Remember, I mentioned earlier 187 polling stations. When we went on air about an hour ago, I'd said about 150 had recorded or